Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of Dexter New Blood Season 1, Episode 7. Everything is clearly hitting the fan in a very bad way.
This was a really good episode. It's starting to get into that part of the old Dexter series that I
Yeah.
really liked, which is, we know who the bad guy is. Dexter and now the bad guy know who each other are and what is going on. That was always sort of my favorite part of these.
And now we're kind of set up in this really interesting showdown where you have Dexter who knows who Kurt is, and Kurt who to some extent has figured out Dexter, and it's sort of a matter of, okay, who can really strike first? Because it's not like Dexter can just hand Kurt off to the cops anymore without something coming back potentially on him.
Yeah, this is where things are getting real good with the series.
All right, well, we are going to talk all about all of that, where Harrison is sort of fitting in with everything, the creepiest Trinity killer sighting that I think we could have ever imagined.
It was so good to see him back on the show.
Ah,
He's such a great character. What a creep show.
I know they said that John Lithgow was coming back, but if that's what we're getting for it, okay, all right. Well, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you guys want to see more of our Dexter New Blood coverage. We also did Power Book 2 Ghost earlier in the day, and you can also take a look at that.
Also follow us over on Instagram, Matt and Jess TV. We have a bunch of Christmas stuff going on over there. We made some cookies last night and they were interesting.
Incredible, I think you mean. Incredible.
So you can check that out over there and follow us over there. But before we get too into this, we do have to talk about that John Lithgow appearance.
Okay,
So
all
we
right.
knew that he was going to pop up at some point this season. That news has been kind of out there for a long time. I mean, I had heard it was going to be sort of very brief, but I was really hoping that we were going to have him sort of be, the person in Harrison's ear a little bit, kind of like how we see with Deb and Dexter, and we had seen with Dexter and his dad, that maybe he was going to sort of pop up near the end of the series to kind of start whispering in Harrison's ear. Like, I did not expect him to be like shirtless, sitting
Okay.
in the bathroom in the blood, being all like, hey, Harrison. It was so weird.
Okay.
But it was perfect. It was a 10 out of 10 because Trinity was very creepy.
This is weird because the appearance was a 10 out of 10, and nothing I have to say right now is a slight against what they actually did, but I think it was a mistake for them to announce in advance that he was coming on, because I think because they did that, it did give me an elevated expectation of, and like you said, we knew it was supposed to be brief, but I thought brief didn't necessarily have to mean like 20 seconds. I thought it could be like 3 or 4 minutes or something to that degree. So I do sort of feel let down because my brain just building up that anticipation. I wanted more than what we got, even though what we got was absolutely horrifying, and I am going to try to just cleanse my brain of it moving forward.
Yeah, I of course wanted more. John Lithgow's amazing and
Yeah.
he was great in this character. I would have taken as much as they would have given me. However, that being said, I had expectations too of sort of, like I said, how I thought he was going to
Yeah.
be used. He wasn't used in that way. To me, he was used in a better way. I feel like when we had that scene sort of Harrison breaking down where he pulled out the straight razor and he's cutting other students from the other school, and Dexter had to jump in again to be like, what is going on? Harrison's like, man, like, I'm really screwed up. I actually remember more than I'm sort of saying that I am. And that it was that memory that he actually remembers Trinity after what happened to his mom, turning to him and kind of being like, don't worry, daddy will be home soon. That's gonna stick with him. Not only did his mom get murdered, he remembers the face
Yeah.
and the shirtless body
Ugh.
of his mother's killer looking at him and talking to him. And I think that is just a million times more powerful than anything I was dreaming up. This is amazing. It was great.
I think it does sort of speak to the idea of a lot of us are sort of formed by the first memories that we have. And I don't necessarily mean that those 100% define us by any means, but like those memories you have sort of just like stick with you, and they sort of haunt you in a lot of different ways. It's like, for some reason, like a lot of my earliest memories are like me like disappointing like my family and things like, so I always kind of wander around being like, I don't want to disappoint anybody. And I think that like haunts me to a certain extent. And I think on this show, you kind of get a lot of that now
Mm-hmm.
with Harrison, where he's haunted by this person
Mm-hmm.
who committed to a life of violence. And I think on some level, he's like, okay, this must be the way that I have to be then. It sort of shapes him.
Yeah, I think Harrison's just he's so lost with everything that's happened. His mom is murdered. He remembers the face of the man who murdered his mother. Then he's left with another serial killer, which we still don't know if he actually knows or not, who then died of cancer or not. We don't actually know really what all the real backstory is.
Yeah.
And then his father left him, abandoned him as well. Like, it's not surprising that he's got some issues. He hasn't really talked to anybody about them or seeked any kind of help or treatment or anything. He's just trying to figure out how to go about it.
This all puts us in a very interesting position because, yeah, it may have been a little bit earlier on this season for Dexter to be like, let's have a serial killer conversation, you and I, Harrison. But now it really does seem like maybe it's too little too late, because Dexter's trying to talk to him. And I get the sense that Dexter was trying to be like, it's okay, I understand your darkness. But at this point, Harrison's just like, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with anything. And he's just taken off.
Yeah. And at the end of the episode, we saw Dexter even start talking to himself where he's like, okay, it's time. I'm going to have to really sit down with him now that I know that he has seen Trinity's face. Like, he actually remembers stuff. Now we're going to actually have a talk. And we saw that Dexter's been taken by somebody.
This is
I'm sure one of Kurt's guys, obviously.
there's a lot we found out about Kurt in this episode, and I think it starts like all the way at the very beginning, because it turns out Angela needing Dexter is her needing Dexter to be the forensic expert. And with a lot of this, like, she's starting to piece together, okay, maybe this is Kurt who was responsible for what's happened to Iris, because there's like a bite mark. And listen, I'm no expert on forensics. I guess a lot of this is in theory possible. I'm taking the show's word for it.
Yeah, I mean, so Dexter found that in one of Iris's teeth there was a bit of skin, and that even though it's 25 years old, that she should still run a test, see if there's a DNA match. She runs it. It's a 66% match, which is enough to bring him in,
Yeah.
but it's not enough to really hold up in court. And then I guess after talking to his lawyer and kind of finding out, what they have against him, and then really kind of playing that out, he realizes that he has an out. And his out is, because it's only a 66% match, he can blame it on someone else in his family. So he tells this story, which we don't know if it's true or not. Could be true, probably true, that his father used to pick up young girls that were, on the run or whatever, and he used to smack them around, hurt them, and then throw them out of the car. And that was the way that it went. And he was around for all of it. So he was exposed while his dad was doing this to young girls in the trucks. And so he has this story that then it was his dad that ended up picking up Iris, and this is what happened to her. But in the flashbacks, we see that it's Kurt.
Yeah, it feels like
we know that it's Kurt.
Yeah.
It's all the other signs of this are there, and that's the piece of the puzzle that Angela is missing, is that these other women that are disappearing are all being killed the same way, which is being killed from a far distance with a rifle.
Yeah.
It's the same that Dexter said for Iris. She was shot long distance with a rifle.
And we don't know for sure, but it feels like there's a chance this is Kurt's sort of first kill, because it feels very messy the way in which all this went about, where he was in the truck with her, they had this argument, she ends up, trying to leave, and then he makes this decision sort of on the fly,
which was also still kind of weird. Like, I don't really know why he decided if this was his first kill, like, why not just let Iris go? What is the purpose of then being like, no, you can't run away back home, I'm just gonna pull up my gun and kill you? Why was that the decision that was made?
I don't know. That's really the big question I have with Kurt overall. Is just sort of like, it seems like at first wants to extend an olive branch to a lot of these people to help them, and then when they refuse his help, eventually he's like, okay, you gotta go, I'm gonna kill you. And it's just like, well, how is this helping anyone? Are you just
Yeah.
saying that without your help they're just gonna be miserable and worthless, so you might as well just kill them anyway?
Yeah, because it if the story that he told about his dad is true,
Yeah.
then it didn't always work out that way in the first place. He was a young kid watching this happen, that it seemed like his dad was just a jerk through and through. Like, did this to his mom left, then he was picking up girls, smacking them around, hurting them, doing awful things, but then letting them go. So this whole like, oh, now I'm gonna grab a gun and shoot her, like I was kind of like, where did this element come from?
I hope we get a little more information on that. I think there's still some sort of missing piece here with Kurt, and
Yes, and part of it has to do with the embalming and all of that
yes.
process. Like, well, there's only a few episodes
Yeah.
left. Why is that in any kind of play, and what is he doing?
Yeah, like the embalming stuff is still out there. I still think there's something with this Olsen dude who we it doesn't feel like we've seen for like 4 episodes now. He's like
Yeah.
completely off the grid, but he was introduced as a big part of this story, and I don't know why. I tend to think that he's connected with all of this somehow. Maybe he's how Kurt ended up getting some of his fortune and how he got some of these businesses off the ground.
Or maybe he is the person that's getting the bodies, because in this sort of cave crawl space that we found Iris, it seems like no one else is there. It's
Yeah.
just her. So all the rest of the women are not there. So it started, I'm kind of wondering if it's not necessarily that Olsen's involved in like the actual killing. We know that he's not, but that maybe then Kurt is doing this embalming process to then hand over to Olsen to do other creepy things with. And that maybe if there was going to be a second season of Dexter, which
Yeah.
I know they said that there isn't, and he's kind of
Yeah.
circling around that there isn't, but listen. Let's talk True Detective. Let's
Oh
talk
boy,
about Big
do we
Little
have to?
Lies. Let's talk about even Squid Game. Like, there's a lot of shows that have been like, no, it's a one and done. They've all come back.
Yeah, like there's I'm sure somehow they're gonna find a way to bring Dexter New Blood back. I don't know what form it's gonna be, but
No, but if they did, I could see it sort of leading up to, if it's sort of like Kurt kills him, embalms him, hands him over to Olsen, and we haven't really seen a lot of Olsen. If it kind of ends with Olsen having these bodies and Kurt is no longer in the picture,
yeah.
then the big bad could be moving into Olsen.
And that would be interesting. That's something we don't usually have all that much in Dexter, where we go from one bad into another bad that are sort of kind of connected. I will say, I think Kurt's a really good big bad at
Oh,
this
yeah,
point.
he's great.
He is so, I mean, Clancy Brown plays him. It's just so charismatic. And he's like this guy who seems like he's got it all figured out, that he is kind of a man of the people, but he's also, and we saw this so well with Dexter and what he was able to sort of do with this titanium rod of doom, in that he's really good, Kurt, at being this sort of like bumbling guy and sort of playing this role of, oh, I don't really know what's going on, and just like doing that whole shtick. And he's always thinking, he's always plotting, and he's a very different sort of character than I think we've had from other Dexter villains.
Yeah, and that whole, oh, I actually know what you did to my son, just so you know, I thought it was snowing and I figured out it was ash and I figured out what you did and here's the rod that was in my son. Again, it tells me that Kurt has to have some sort of background
Yes.
in funeral service if he knows this much about cremation, because not everyone would know that.
I would not know that. I would not have any clue about any of this sort of stuff. The only thing I assumed was that eventually we were going to see something come back with that incinerator, just because of the way that they shot it, but I didn't know it was going to be this.
That scene with Dexter and Kurt in the jail was fire. It was so intense. It was so good. And this is the type of Dexter stuff that I lived for in the old series as well, is those moments where the two killers know what each other's kind of up to somewhat, and they're both like moving their pieces around the board and showing a little bit of their hand, but not everything. It was so good.
Dexter knows now he's probably going to end up in a spot where he has to kill Kurt. Like, he tried to find a way to get more concrete evidence. Like, he decides, okay, I'm going to go take Angela to, the creepy cabin of death, and we're going to go up there. And, like, somehow Kurt has, like, a cleaning crew, like, nobody's business. I don't know if he's, like, gone and found a way to, like, resurrect Mr. Kaplan from the blacklist and, like, that whole crew to just wipe out that place.
I legit laughed out loud when he was like, oh, they were just like standing around like, oh, it looks like maybe there's some marks on the ground that maybe someone has moved something. And then they do this like above shot, and it's like, it looks like a whole truck of stuff had like scraped the whole ground. I'm like, really, Dexter? Someone has moved stuff.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Fair assessment.
Anybody can see this.
This is the other question. When did they do all this? Because I would be kind of suspicious if there's like a giant U-Haul truck like coming out of the middle of nowhere in the woods. Like, where did you put all this stuff, Kurt?
Well, clearly Kurt's guys from his trucking company, I mean, they know something. We had that one guy hand the titanium rod to Harrison to give to his dad. So I mean, they know what's going on. They're helping to some degree. He's not working alone with all of it.
And because Kurt is like this guy, he's probably able to like go to his goons and just be like, hey, I got this thing I need you to deliver to Harrison. And they're probably just like, okay, yeah, boss, yeah, we'll do whatever you want, whatever, because he just has that sort of like magnetic ability about him.
Yeah, and we don't know how many of them are actually like helping with some stuff like this. Like, Kurt's an older guy who doesn't seem like he's in that amazing of shape. He's a big guy, but the marks that were like across the walls and in his cabin, the room of doom and all that stuff feels like he needed help.
Yeah.
Like, he's not dragging that stuff out by himself. And I'm assuming that it's guys like the guy who gave the titanium rod to Harrison. I mean, he carried that, like, Drummel of whatever by himself. That whole, like, was it like a keg of stuff? Like, those things are not light. Most people have to like roll them, and he just was like, I'm like, oh man, that guy's strong.
He's got an interesting crew, and we don't know that much really about like that part of Kurt's world other than that, okay, he's got a truck stop. He's fine to let Harrison work there, and Harrison, of course, is dealing with Dexter showing up there.
Okay, well, now we kind of have a better idea of why he's circling Harrison. And Dexter even said it himself, and I think that he's right, that Kurt's looking for a son for a son. He knows that Dexter killed or had something to do with burning his son's body. Now he's circling Dexter's son.
I think it is a way to just make sure he can hurt him, because at first maybe it was okay, I can kill this guy and have this sort of be the case. I can perform my ritual, and it just seems like now, and I wonder if we're going to be seeing even more of this moving forward, it's a situation where this is a smart guy, Kurt, right? Like, he probably realizes that at this point, nothing would hurt Dexter more than to sort of bring in Harrison as his own son and be like, your son loves me more than he does you. How does that make you feel? I bet it's miserable.
Yeah, and then the minute that Harrison kind of starts to turn on him, just kill him, like hurt Dexter twice.
Now, there are other problems now coming Dexter's way, and Molly, okay, we managed to go 19 minutes without talking about how irritating a character Molly is.
No, and this is the part of the episode where I was kind of like, what does this have to really do with anything? So Angela already knows that Dexter lied to her, majorly lied to her.
Yeah.
He did end up telling her quite a bit of the truth. Of course, he left out the I'm a killer part, but he told her a lot of the truth.
Yeah.
She already knows that he's being kind of shifty. She also knows that there's DNA that was on Iris's tooth, and it is not anything to do with Dexter. It is either Kurt or Kurt's dad or whatever. So Molly getting in here and being like, how did he hear this conversation? How did he happen to be here? Whatever. And now Angela's like, I'm like, Angela, you already know that he lied to you.
Yeah.
You already know that he's like an investigator to some degree. He was a forensics expert. He was working with the cops.
Yeah.
This is what he does. He sees stuff. He digs into stuff. That's why you called him at the beginning of the episode. So if he also is circling Kurt, because clearly he is, And then why is this that surprising? Like, I don't really know where they're going with this. If they're trying to make it that Angela's going to investigate Dexter, for what? Like, for what? You already have the DNA, so you
Yeah.
know that he wasn't there. And he wasn't there 25 years ago
Yeah.
when all of this kicked off with Iris in the first place. Like, it's so thin. It
It,
is so thin.
the part of it I just don't understand is why, if you're Molly, Dexter saved your life. Like, if Dexter wasn't there, and Molly kind of made it clear that she knows this, that if Dexter hadn't shown up, something terrible probably would have happened to her. And I'm not Molly. I don't know if you're a true crime podcaster, you start to get more paranoid, but I would be so grateful that this person saved my life that I would probably overlook, like, okay, how did they overhear this conversation? Why were they following? Because it's just like, ultimately, in the end, this person saved you. This person clearly did not want anything bad to happen to you. So I'm just surprised that she was doing this sort of digging. I would understand it more if she did recognize Dexter in Miami and was like, okay, this guy was in Miami. Why was he
Mhm.
here? Why was if we had like that sort of context, I would be like, okay, I get it, Molly. Something is off here. But as it is, I just don't know.
Like, obviously something is off where she was saying, we can't hear what they're arguing about
Yeah.
at the bar, so why was he listening in on my stuff, whatever. That neither one of them were kind of like, maybe he suspected something was
Yeah.
going on with Kurt as well. You did. You're a
Yeah.
podcaster. Like, he's a guy who works at the tackle and bait shop. Like, why can he not think something's going on and do a little personal investigation of his own as well? Like, not one of them thought maybe that's what was happening.
It feels a little bit rushed, like they're trying to say, all right, if we do have a Dexter New Blood season 2, it may not take place in Iron Lake. It feels like they're really rushing to get this Iron Lake part out of the way, and that Angela's gonna find out everything about Dexter by the end of this season, and either he's gonna have to do something about her, or he's gonna have to skip town again, or something's gonna happen to him. And I would have been fine if they had just stretched this out for another season or two.
Yeah, or if they just ended up in a situation, if this is where they're going, where, this is Dexter New Blood. New Blood's obviously Harrison.
Yeah.
So if, Michael C. Hall only wanted to do one season, but the show wants to move on with the spinoff into the next season, it doesn't have to be that it takes place in Iron Lake. Like, Harrison can move forward somewhere else and do something else, whether or not Dexter is alive or not. Like, if Dexter ends up deciding he's going to stay there, Angela's fine with it. It doesn't always have to be like he either gets run out of town or he gets killed. It could be a situation where Harrison is like, this isn't for me. I'm leaving. You can't really stop me, and just go somewhere else to be able to sort of continue his path of wherever he's going to end up with his own dark passenger. But it does feel like we're kind of moving into Dexter's either going to die or he's going to have to leave town. I don't think they're just going to let him have the happy ending of, I'm doing all right. I'm Jim Lindsay living in Iron Lake. I mean, then we're kind of running into the same conclusion that we already had, which was, oh, he's off by himself, being a lumberjack, living his life.
They're gonna kill Dexter. I'm not happy about that. Listen, I know Dexter's a horrible person. I know he's a serial killer. I understand all that, but he is compelling, and they're gonna kill him, and then I'm gonna be upset about it.
Well, if they do and they decide to actually move forward with 6 Feet Under, I will see you over there, Michael.
Oh, okay. This is 6 feet under. Oh, yes. Okay. Well, all right. 6 feet. Why is everything coming back? 6 feet under. You had a perfect finale. You don't need this.
6 Feet Under did have a perfect finale, and a lot of those characters are doing other stuff, or those actors
Yeah.
are doing other stuff, so we'll see what that ends up being like anyways, if it actually ends up going all the way through.
Okay. Well, what did you guys think about Dexter New Blood this time around? Where do you think we are going? Are you as stoked for the Dexter versus Kurt showdown that we are? Share in the comments. Give this video a like. Thank you so much, and we'll see you here next time.